Today what I'm talking about is, especially at the tail end of our no sugar group, and no sugar challenge I should say, and every January there's a lot of talk about weight loss. I just did a talk here in the office. What night was that? 2 nights ago. I feel like I've been in here a lot these days. I feel like you've been doing nothing but listening to me talk. So we're going to be talking about weight loss and you specifically. And you know who I'm talking to. Well, all of you. But the big thing when it comes to weight loss is everybody wants to jump on the boat after the holidays. So after the holidays, now it's time to lose weight. Well, during the holidays, you can lose weight too. But most people decide, nah, I don't want to. I'm going to enjoy everything. And I tell them to, don't do no sugar in December. Don't do things like detoxing in the holidays because of the added stress, the added sugar, all the added treats. You're not in control of all the food. You're not in control of all the ingredients. And you may sabotage yourself even if you're not really trying to. And then there's frustration and then you quit. Okay? Now, when it comes to post-holidays, I always like to bring in this handsome guy right here because as you might know, that is me. I was not always this old and handsome. I used to be young and handsome too. But growing up, I grew up in the time where the food pyramid was really taking off and all these new fast food stores were coming out, and my diet mainly consisted of fast food, soda, as much as I could, as often as I could. And when my active lifestyle and my athletic career kind of stopped, and I stopped moving as much as I could, I got to a point to where as I got out of chiropractic school and I was practicing up north in Lakewood, Wisconsin, and drinking 2 liters of soda per day, really smart for a doctor, right? I ended up developing diabetes. And I ended up gaining a ton of weight. So I got to a point where I was, destroying my health. And through all the lab testing that I started doing, based on the Wellness Way principles and practices and the labs we were using, I discovered that I had given myself so much fatty liver that I developed what's called fatty pancreas. And my pancreas couldn't keep up with the amount of sugar I was eating, so my insulin tanked, right? I couldn't physically make it anymore. So I had a choice to make. I could start, picking my finger every day and testing my blood and taking metformin and doing all this other stuff that they would have told me to do. Or I could do a version of no sugar. Now, I did a lot less sugar. I didn't do no sugar. Right? Because immediately stopped drinking 2 liters of soda per day, probably a good idea, which is why now I drink a lot of black coffee. And changing the quality of the food that I eat and eating differently. Now, when it comes to your journey, and the same thing happened with my journey, you're going to go through ebbs and flows, ups and downs, plateaus, and everything else when it comes to weight loss. But in my case, for me, what was the best first step? Right? You have to take the first step. First step first, cut out all the poison that you're putting into your body, right? Stupid. And once I started cutting out sugar, I lost a lot of weight in a short period of time because I was putting so much sugar in, right? And once the weight loss from the sugar normalized, now I was still overweight. I hadn't really started doing anything physically wise. I hadn't looked at food allergies. I hadn't looked at my hormones. I hadn't looked at my gut or anything like that. So along the way, adding in these tools, different steps along the way had different jumps in weight loss. I even talk about all the time where I did my first stool test because I just had this constant bloating that wouldn't go away, and my now wife always made fun of me because it looked like I was arching my back out all the time, but I wasn't. It was just sticking out of the front. And I did a stool test, and that week when I got the results back, I lost 12 pounds in a week. So I'm going to be talking about different things as we go through today, kind of introducing different things and different ways to look at weight loss for you. But like I said, the number one thing that has to change first is how you think and how you approach your health, okay? Because when it comes to weight loss, you got to be diligent. You can't be, you always hear 70-30, 80-20, and you're gonna hit those bumps a lot bigger, and those are the speed bumps, and they're just gonna take that track of when you start to when you get to where you want to, and it's gonna just lengthen it out. Everybody says, does that put me back to start? No, because you've gotten some stuff healing up, but it's gonna take your finish line and move it out, right? So like I said, one of the first things I did, and why no sugar is so important, is cutting all that stuff out. Because is it just about weight loss? No. Not putting poison into a system is what it's really about. Now, if that's one of your main stressors, eating the sugar, then doing something like an Atkins or a ketogenic style diet is going to work very well for you. So when you look at this is an article from PubMed. You can see the link right there. It says, Beyond Weight Loss, a review of therapeutic uses of very low carbohydrate ketogenic diets. So in the first line, you can see that ketogenic diets may have been used in the 1920s, as early since the 1920s, as a therapy for epilepsy, and can sometimes completely remove the need for medication. That's what they should be used for. Health, right? Increasing the health. But if you're obese, if you're overweight, if you're not doing anything, no sugar can do an amazing amount of helping your body get to a spot where it can heal better, okay? Now, that's why we do the No Sugar Challenge in January, right? So that's why it helps people get on the bandwagon, and it's not a one-day challenge, it's not a 3-day challenge, it's the whole month of January. That's what helps turn it into more of a lifestyle. Because what a study showed, that you have to do something 21 days in a row to create a habit. So if you can sleep better for 21 days, if you can do sleep hygiene practices, if you can do no sugar practices, if you can get more protein in regularly, it becomes a lot easier just to turn it into a habit, and it just becomes the way you live your life. And then it becomes a lot less stressful, right? So changing from drinking Red Bull to drinking Numa energy drink. Massively different, better quality ingredients, still tasty. I just drink too many of them. So here, this is from that article. This is a picture. They talk about the benefits of ketogenic diet when it comes to strong evidence and emerging evidence. They're always constantly studying this stuff. So when you look, obviously, diabetes and weight reduction, I already mentioned the epilepsy and all the different mechanisms. They're mentioning all the mechanisms of how it works too, not just, yeah, it kind of works here. Neurological diseases, hormonal issues like PCOS, immune system issues like cancer, skin issues, acne, beef tallow too, right? But all these different things have been studied and researched and researched and researched. This article took all the research articles, reviewed them all, and put all the evidence together, and that's actually where that picture came from, right? So you can take a picture of that and study it, blow it up, and if any of those things might be affecting you, well, a ketogenic diet is going to be great, right? But like I said, a lot of people going through the No Sugar Challenge haven't lost weight. And that's really frustrating for a lot of people, because it's probably one of the most common comments you get to see in there is like, I've been doing this for 3 weeks, I haven't lost a pound. Okay, maybe it wasn't your main thing that was causing you to not lose weight. That's where you got to look at the whole body from a whole body perspective, and different people have different triggers. You are you, you're not your neighbor. So what else can really stand in the way of losing weight? And for me, it's always my favorite to talk about because it's the fastest way to lose weight. Not necessarily losing fat, but definitely losing weight. And that is inflammation. So the relationship between body weight and inflammation. So obesity is associated with many pathological conditions. Tumor necrosis factor is one of the key mediators of inflammation involved in the obesity-related insulin resistance development. Now, they do, in my opinion, at the bottom say that inflammation is more likely a consequence rather than a cause of obesity, but you can't have one without the other. Love and marriage, right? You can't have one without the other. So you can't be obese and not be inflamed. You can be inflamed and not obese. So therefore, obesity doesn't cause it. It can cause obesity, okay? But they do go hand in hand, and when we talk about inflammation, you may know that we talk about inflammation a lot here at the Wellness Way, because it's the one thing pretty much every single health profession agrees on, is that no sickness or disease process begins without inflammation, right? So that's when we got to go in and figure out what those inflammatory triggers are, so that if you can identify them, you can help to remove them. Sometimes you need support, sometimes you need a kick in the butt, sometimes you just need to put down the snacks. So what causes inflammation? There's three things. And they all start with T, so it becomes easier to remember. We call them the three T's: traumas, toxins, and thoughts. So that is why one of the first things that I like to do with my patients is shoot x-rays. Because you can see the posture, you can see the bad habits, you can see the traumatic part of it, and look at the spine, which protects the brain and nervous system, and figure out what's the best way to help remove the stressor of the trauma, to take the stress out of the nervous system, right, which is one of the most, well, it's the most important system of the body. And then you can start taking out the physical stress and teach people how to do that at home, right? Toxins. You can see on this picture, you can see all that gut. You can see shadows and inflammation in different forms of things like bone spurs and things like that on x-rays. You can see where toxins and environmental stuff might cause the liver to be too swollen up or the gut to be massively inflamed. And then you have thoughts or mental stress, right? And as Doc always says, you can get rid of sugar cravings, you can get rid of stress the same way. Die, right? Because there's always two things I always tell people. We can't control what goes into your body, right? We can't put you in a bubble and have you eat perfect food and have you not breathe in any air, toxic food, or drink fluids without any toxins in them. You're in control of your environment as much as you can be. And we also can't control your stress. Or, more importantly, we can help your stress response, right? And this is one of my favorite things. Let's say this is a glass of milk. It's not a glass of milk, but you've heard the saying, don't cry over spilled milk. But let's say if I dump this over, there's gonna be a bunch of different stress response reactions in this room. Some are gonna be like, oh, grab some paper towel, Jason's an idiot, he spilled. And some people are gonna be like, oh, it's gonna get in the carpet, it's gonna cause mold, we're gonna have to replace the mold, we're gonna have to replace the desk because it's gonna rot and it's not gonna match the other desk, and now we gotta spend $40,000 replacing all the desks. And some people know exactly what I'm talking about in here, right? So how can we help? Well, trauma, posture correction, making sure your body's set up to recover from injury. Right? Posture correction. If you come into our office, you'll see a bunch of what I lovingly call torture tables, but we can teach you how to take care of your spine and correct the posture so you can start eliminating a lot of that stress that's in your nervous system. Toxins. What's toxic? Well, air, water, food. So you can't really avoid that. But if your detoxification pathways are messed up, now we can help support your body's ability to catch up, empty your bucket, and then start removing those toxins more effectively, just as you normally walk and breathe. Food allergies. Food allergies are toxic and they cause inflammation to the body. And if you don't know that you're eating something very good for you that's actually stressing out your immune system and causing inflammation, you don't know why you feel like crap all the time. But figuring out those triggers and removing them can lessen your inflammatory load, and inflammation carries along with it water, right? If you sprain your ankle doesn't shrink, it swells up, takes up more space. That's fluid. And if you're constantly causing inflammation in your body and you find those triggers, you can start to dump that water and the scale goes down very rapidly. But it also sets your body up to metabolically function more effectively so that you can get into a spot where maybe now you can start burning that fat like you want, okay? And then thoughts. Thoughts is the hardest one, right? Because your brain's always running. You have stress, you have jobs, you have bills to pay, you have in-laws, you have all these different things going on. Maybe you just moved across the country. But, and I'm not going to sing it, but it's a great idea. It's just stop stressing out about something that's over, done with, and you can't control it anymore. And I wrote 5x5 up there because a friend of mine once said, and I kind of kept running with it, and it's the 5x5 rule, and that simply states that if it's really not going to matter in 5 years, don't spend more than 5 minutes stressing out about it. And that's really hard to do. I posted that once, and I got so much hate from people, like, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. You still have to stress out about it. It's like, apparently you have to stress out about it. I don't, but that's your choice. And then a lot of times, talking to people, right? Counseling. A lot of people need to talk to somebody to help them process things more effectively so that they can get that stress response to calm down, right? Some people have to get divorced. Some people have to call Crystal and put some people in the ground or whatever it is. So, inside joke here in the office. But sometimes removing people from your life. There's this book out there called Necessary Endings. Sometimes it's addition by subtraction, right? You feel better, you have less stress just because this person's gone, or you got a new job, or you left your old job where you hated the people, right? So put all those together, now you can really start talking about how to calm down inflammation, okay? Now, I'm gonna take a break here in a second, but this was one of my favorite things because everybody can go to Walmart or Shopko or GNC or sporting goods store, join a gym and all this stuff, and everybody's going to have different results. So I found this article, and it's out of the Diabetes, Obesity, and Metabolism Journal. It says evidence-based weight loss interventions, individualized treatment options to maximize patient outcomes. Not everybody gets the same results from doing the same things. You can take identical twins who both do the same things, and they're going to have massively different results, right? Maybe one goes to the gym and builds a bunch of muscle. Maybe one doesn't lose a pound or gets super skinny or whatever it is. They can both eat the same food. One can be allergic to it. One might not be allergic to it. So everything has to be customized to you. How do you customize it to somebody? You have to get into their body and figure out how their body's actually functioning. And that's why our testing is so important, to figure out what specifically you need. Because if you don't treat your journey as yours, then you're going to struggle a lot more. And that's not what you want, because that makes it easier to quit, right? And then you have an excuse, oh, it didn't work, I tried it, I'm just not going to do it anymore. So when it comes to you, remember, figuring out what your body specifically needs or should avoid or has to get taken care of means the most. And when it comes to foods, when it comes to stressors and things like that, the choices, got to remember, they're always yours. Regardless of the situation, you get to choose how you feel about a certain situation, right? But when it comes time to give your body support, there are certain things that we can do. And these are things that I mentioned before, like when you get into the holidays and you see that tray full of cookies or a bunch of bread laying on the counter, you never walk by just once and grab one. 5 minutes later, you come back, yeah, maybe I'll try this one. Well, maybe I'll try this one. And sugar levels and weight gain are, I won't say they're a holiday problem, they're how we handle the holidays problem. And if we're doing that, you know they're going to be snacking more, you're going to be more parties and stuff like that. Your sugar is going to get out of whack. So one of my favorite herbs that we actually use is Gymnema, right? Gymnema is, in Hindi, it's actually called the sugar destroyer, Gurmer. It's always one of my favorite herbs, especially when it comes to insulin resistance, blood sugar issues, diabetes, and helping break sweet habits. And this is what you do, because this is how it works. What it does is it leaches onto the sweet receptors of the tongue so that when you actually do it and take it and you eat something sweet, like if I drink this right afterwards, it's going to taste like nothing. So the next time I look at this, maybe I should start doing that. But the next time you look at that same sweet, it's going to be easier to say, well, that tasted like junk last time. And it's easier to break those habits and get those things out. Even if your blood sugar regulation is good, but you just have those bad habits, I'll have people just take a little bit, swish it around their mouth for a second. We did this at a seminar once. Some ladies came up on stage, and I think we had them drink Pepsi right afterwards. And they're like, this tastes like garbage. It doesn't taste like anything, right? But then the next time they see that Pepsi, maybe they think, no, that wasn't good. I don't need to drink that anymore. So it can help actually break bad habits as well as functionally helping your body process blood sugar better, okay? So here was a comprehensive review on the potential clinical potentials, pharmacological and clinical potentials of Gymnema. And see what it does is it renders the glucose lowering activity due to the presence of the phytochemicals such as germarin, aka germer, gymnemic acids, as well as gymnemosaponins. So Gymnema is also known to have antioxidant, antibiotic, anti-inflammatory, antiviral, gastro and hepatoprotective, anti-cancer, and lipid-lowering activities. Like I said, the beautiful things about medicinal herbs is there's so many components and constituents that they don't even know about yet, but there is so much more research on medicinal herbs than there are in any medication. It has been so well researched and has so many benefits depending on what you want to use it for. So now, is its lipid lowering activities as strong as maybe something else? Maybe not, but it's one-stop shop herb for doing all those things in the body to some extent, okay? But it can't outperform bad habits. Like you can't out-supplement bad lifestyle. You can't eat at McDonald's every day and take something like Gymnema and not expect to get sick. That's not how it works. You have to do the work. That's the cool part. But our goal is to teach you these things so that your journey doesn't take as long, so that you can get from A to B a lot quicker, okay? Now, here is how we got to this point. A lot of you have asked me for copies of this. I think at some point they might have even taken it down off of PubMed, but I still have the link to the journal. So you can still buy the physical journal. But this is from 1965, and what they were trying to do was say that high cholesterol causes heart disease, and eating fats causes increased cholesterol, causing heart disease. It was one of the biggest garbage studies that was ever done, in my humble opinion. But this is how they did it, right? So they used fats like butter and oils on what? Waffles, muffins, cakes, cookies, pie crust, biscuits, salad dressings, and put the spreads for bread on there. And guess what happened? Cholesterol raised. But what they did was they blamed the fats and the oils, not the cakes, the waffles, the muffins, the pie crust, and the cookies and everything else. So sugar was coming in and causing all these inflammatory reactions, and the fats took the heat. So now you start seeing all these fat-free, low-fat foods in the grocery stores with a big label on the front that says fat-free. Well, if you take all the fat out of food, you know what it tastes like? It tastes like cardboard. So what do you have to do to make it taste good? You put in a ton of sugar. And now what do you have? An obesity epidemic. Because if you go back and look at pictures from 60s, 70s, like they have these pictures all over like the beaches out in California and stuff like that, and there's like no obesity. And now it's everywhere, right? So that's sugar. Now let's talk about that other favorite thing that everybody has to experience on a daily basis. We all have stress, right? So what is stress? Now this sounds like we wrote it, but this is from Dorland Medical Dictionary. It says stress is a physical or psychological stimulus that can produce mental or physiological reactions that may lead to illness. What it just said was stress can make you sick. Technically, it's a disruption of balance in the body which may be triggered by alarming experiences. Here's the kicker. They can be real experiences, like I'm being chased by a tiger, or they can be imaginary, like they can be the 6-inch problem, right? And ladies especially, this is for you, about 90% of the stuff you guys stress out about never ever happens. It just doesn't. It's called worrying about nothing, and you're making yourself sick. So that's where I always tell people, if you're stressed and you're in your head, get out of your head, get into your body. I don't care if you have like a rubber band around your wrist and you snap your wrist, like snap out of it, or give your husband permission to like bop you on the back of the head, or get into the gym, or drop down, do a bunch of push-ups, or run in place, or do some jumping jacks, something to physically change your state so that you get out of this zone and get into the rest. Because if this keeps going, the rest will not follow. Okay, so stress can be physical, chemical, or emotional. So what's one of my favorite herbs to help combat the stress response? Not put a shield around you to protect you from the stress, because that's impossible, but what can help calm down the stress response, and that's one of my favorites, which is California Poppy. Okay, now, calm feelings of anxiety, encourages relaxation, helps with healthy sleep, which if you cannot sleep, you cannot heal, right? But this is a study that did the behavioral effects of Eschscholzia californica. That's why they say California Poppy. But it has a sedative and anxiolytic properties that can help calm down the stress response. But like I said, we can't take away the stressor, but we can help with the stress response.